Hey, Frank Clark here, former IRS employee. I retired in 2019 after 28 years. And I want to talk to you about the biggest impediment to field collection at the Internal Revenue Service. What are my bona fides? I started in 1991 as a field revenue officer. What we did is we took the hardest cases, the ones that weren't resolved by sending a letter to people or by the nice phone calls and then eventually the not so nice phone calls. And we would go out and knock on doors and tell people, hey, you owe taxes or you haven't filed your returns and I need you to resolve that. And I did that until 2010. Now, for part of that time, I worked international cases, so I was on the phone talking to people overseas. But it's the same thing, just slightly different ways to approach it. When I first started in 1991, I was a grade 7 trainee, and they gave me my desk, and the desk had 3 staplers. So I picked the best one, and I said to my boss, I don't need these other 2. What do I do with them? And he said, oh, I'm going to put them in the desk drawer in case somebody needs one. 1992, Bill Clinton was elected, and he set Al Gore to the task of making government more efficient. He was the original Dozier. And I'm sure he did some good work, and I'm sure his intentions were good. But the way that it directly affected me is that we received this memo saying, oh, we have good news for you. We identified that people at the IRS are having trouble getting certain supplies, and one of these is getting staplers. So we bought a bunch of staplers, and you're getting, so I had a 4th stapler. Thank you, Vice President Gore. 2008, the Obama administration came in and they tried their best to make government more efficient. All I know is that I got to move to Miami because they hired a bunch of people and I got to train new hire revenue officers in Miami. They were supposed to lay people off, but they didn't. And once again, I'm sure they did the best that they could, but I didn't see really any impact from it. The biggest problem that needs to be solved, and I'm looking at this as former employee and former manager. The biggest problem is that in the IRS, you can't measure productivity the way you do in an organization that sells a product. You can't say the guy who collects the most money gets the most prizes. It would be, they would turn us into ravenous dogs. So they had to come up with a focus that would make us do the right things, resolve these cases, collect the dollars, get the tax returns filed, but also wouldn't sick us on the taxpayers. So they developed something called quality. And quality is a checklist of things like, did you do this? Did you do this? There was one in particular that people would harangue revenue officers and settlement officers about all the time, and that was something called Publication 1, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Did you read that to the taxpayer? Did you ask them if they understood it? Did you warn of enforcement? Did you tell them exactly what they needed to do? Well, you might have done all those things, but if you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. So the focus became not the results, but how you got to the results. I have several ideas. I pondered this thing for years. How do you fix this? I talked to other managers and they agreed. What it winds up doing is it makes a whole bunch of gatekeepers. When you want to close a case, they're looking at it and going, no, you didn't hit the quality standards. Boom, it's coming back to you. So managers, instead of trying to get the cases closed, try to figure out ways to keep them open so that you can make sure you hit all these quality steps. It's maddening. The best thing to do is call a constitutional convention and get the 16th Amendment overturned. But short of that, we need to find a way to take that out. We're never going to be able to just measure productivity as who collects the most dollars in returns, but we have to figure out a way to get that out of it. And maybe something AI, an algorithm that works through the thing. I like the idea of every interview you have with the taxpayer wear a body cam, and so that way you're hearing you and you're seeing the taxpayer and finding out did they understand and all that kind of stuff. But listen, this is for greater minds than me, and I hope this is helpful. Let me know if there's anything you need, follow-up questions, anything like that. Peace out. Go Birds.